Teamwork. We talked about teams. Let's see how they work. That really is part of the job. Okay, some of the best task characteristics. What kind of tasks should you be doing? The complex ones, chop them up in pieces and assign them. Let the individuals go carry them out. If they have permission to talk to other people on the team outside the team meeting, and sit down there and chop up the pieces, give them out, and let them all come back together. Sometimes you get stuff done in a week doing that. Sometimes it takes a month, whatever it is. But the complex tasks, chop them up into specialized roles. You have a lot of different tasks. Some of them you have some organic tasks, which they almost don't have a real defined aspect as to what's supposed to be done because it's so creative. Some of them really have low task variability. Get this done, get this done, get this done, get this done. It's like a checklist. It depends what the tasks are, divide them up. And a lot of times you have a higher task, the higher the level, the more interdependent it has on other ones. Here's an example of that. You have three different things. You have shared resources, and it could be staff, it could be equipment, it could be facilities. Pooled independence, you have everybody has an independence, they can work on their own. Sometimes you have sequential independence where this person has to finish this job, this person has this job, and this person has this job. As a team, if you're a team leader, make certain that you clearly identify, okay, this is to be done by this date and 4 days by you, okay, and then after that, you turn that over here to Sam, and then Sam turns it over to Alicia over here. You have them all in sequence, identify the due dates, and when they send it over, have them copy the team. I've finished my task on this date, and I'm sending it over too. Make certain that there's good communication so people know where it's at if you want your team to function. Sometimes you don't need to have that communication. It just clutters up their email. So maybe it's individual communication. It depends what you're doing and what your plan is. And then sometimes you have this reciprocal independence where everybody is doing stuff and everything else, and you have to have a lot of communication. It depends what the project is, and it depends how much you have interdependence. Try to keep the team small if you can, because there's less process loss. That process loss is a big term for our class, but it's a real term in the real world, because the more time you have in meetings where people are babbling and that person sitting at the table is unengaged, you are losing money, you're losing performance, you're losing opportunities in other ways as an organization. The smaller teams, they feel more engaged in the teamwork, and that moves much faster. But sometimes a team could be large, but when you start hitting over 40 on a team, it takes skill set to manage it, and you have to sit down and hold a lot more accountability. And if you're holding team A accountable, you have team A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. By time team A reports, team C, team D, team L is fall asleep. You got to be careful and don't waste people times because the team is too big. Sometimes you have to break teams up into bigger chunks and let maybe two teams go do this and that. It just depends how you set it up. Team composition, incredible. You have the 5 C's. Isn't it incredible how these words all end up with the C? You really have coordinating, you have a lot of communicating, you have comforting. I mean, sometimes you got to sit down there and listen to people and have some empathy. Nowadays, in our work environment we have today, more than ever, employees are sharing some of the emotional difficulties they have to their bosses in the workplace. You need to show empathy now to be a team leader. A lot of it is you got to be a nurturing professional group. Pay attention to people, especially some of the difficulties they have to go through to get their job done. And sometimes that whole world outside of work overlaps into the world inside of work, especially now since so many people work some part of the week at home. Conflict handling is a big thing. Do not let conflict simmer. Some cultures do that, and I view it as problematic. But if there's a conflict brewing, you're better off dealing with it right away. Deal with it privately. If there's two people, you're better off, in my opinion, deal with them singly, and then once you're all done, bring them in and lay out the expectations of what you have to have done. If you have to have some type of mediation, fine, but make certain that you stop wars before they fester too far. Otherwise, you're going to have a bloody warfare later on in the organization. It's to tear the team apart and damage the organization and your goals and objectives and maybe somebody's career. Make certain you share resource and you accommodate. sometimes it depends on the team. I've gone through and labeled the expected behaviors. The first meeting, you get yourself a big piece of paper and a big marker, and you lay out, and you have a list as to who's going to do what, and you lay it out, hold people accountable. I was in negotiations with a different union once upon a time, and in our meeting, we had agreed that everything in that room would be confidential. Lo and behold, I had the union president out, and apparently he said something that happened in that meeting to somebody else, and he was gossiping behind the back. The next meeting, I put the very first item, confidentiality. It says, I put this on here on the agenda because this is what we said we would do. Now, I want to be clear and keep in mind that president and his team were there, and my team was there. I says, at our last meeting, we talked about this, and I heard you telling people we're saying the following over here. Did you do that? Well, and everybody knew he had. I says, well, did you? I says, because we agreed on something. Before you answer any further, everybody knows this is what happened. Here's my expectations. You keep your word, or I'm going to call you out. What that is here in this room, we have agreed to that. Now, are we going to renew that commitment or we're not? If we're not, we're going to have a real major issue here, because this is negotiations and our process is confidential. Otherwise, if you want to broadcast it out, I'm going to broadcast my side of the story, and it's going to be very different from yours. Now, are we going to keep it confidential or not? Well, yeah, I was trying to be confidential, just kind of, I'm just saying from this point forward, and you know what? Never a problem for the next 5 years with that union, because of the fact he knew I'd call him on it. You need to sit down if you're going to have a team, even like a negotiation. In theory, you have two different sides. I'm sorry, the truth of the matter is, if you're having good communications and you want to develop that trust, you need to be clear, specific, and develop the trust. That's all part of it, because that negotiating teams, even though they're opposite sides, you need to sit down and make sure everybody's being honest and treat that as a team and expect dignity and respect and give dignity, respect, and don't deal with whispering. So diversity, diverse knowledge is a big thing, diverse values, perspectives. Sometimes people, including me, I have to step back and I just have to listen to somebody to hear where they're coming from. And then I have to sit down and say, I hate when somebody else is right. And then you have to admit you're wrong. It's painful, it hurts. But the truth is, people will respect you if you actually back up because you won a place and you admit that this is what happened. I agree with you. Let me change my perspective on this thing and just come out and say it. The advantages is pay attention to different perspectives. You get a broader knowledge base and you get better representation of constituents, because all of a sudden that person who was disagreeing with you, if you roll on it because they're right and you admit it, they go up a couple notches in perspective, and so do you. The problem with this, though, is you get slower team development, and then you have fault lines within it. So be cautious about it. Team process, you have a lot of cognitive and emotional dynamics. It'll change as the team evolves. We have team development, we have norms, roles, cohesion. Trust is gigantic. I'll talk more about that. The team development and the heart of the team process. A couple of things here to wrap up this session. The 2 pizza rule: start meetings on time, end on time. End of each meeting, review who does what. We call that accountability. Send up minutes prior to team meetings and include who was supposed to do what. Teamwork works when you work the team. Take care.